This is Greg Mafidis. I'm the chairman and founder of the Posse List, and today we are at the Georgetown University Law Center. It's the last day of the conference here on law firm evolution, Brave New World or Business as Usual. We're very honored today to have Mr. Richard Susskind, who most of us know as the author of End of Lawyers, but for those of you who don't know, he's also IT advisor to the Lord Chief Justice of England. Richard, thanks for joining us today.
Good to be here, Greg.
I want to follow up with some comments you made last night at the dinner. One of them concerned your comments about private equity moving into law firms. We know that it's moved into the UK and Australia. Do you think it will cross the sea, so to speak? Does it have to come to the United States?
I think it should be clear in the UK, it's moved in is probably an overstatement. There will soon be the possibility for there to be...
Through the Law Act, okay.
The Legal Services Act 2007. So what's been interesting to me is the extent to which certain forms of legal businesses are attractive investments. And this, although I've advised a private equity firm, this is a personal view, I think it's pretty clear that the conventional law firm is not a particularly attractive investment for a private equity house. On one level, one can say they're 0% profitable, and by that I mean, it's interesting, it was a point raised at the conference, most law firms, the equity partners take out all profit at the end of the year, so the retained profits are usually almost zero, the margins therefore is zero. That in one fairly superficial way suggests that the actual profitability is not particularly attractive for an external investor. But more generally, I think what you're seeing with people who come from private equity is that they're very business-like, very astute individuals who see a large legal market, in England for example, £25 billion, and wonder whether or not there might be scope for delivering legal services in new, better, more efficient ways. They are committed to outstanding service, but far more, I think, open-minded to new ways of delivering services. So there's no prior commitment to hourly billing, to pyramidic structures, to expensive buildings and expensive cities. There's just a genuine interest to see, is this a market in which we can invest?
So the money will more likely go into legal services companies, for instance, than they will the law firms themselves.
I think it's too restricted to think that law firms are the only potential targets. And yes, it seems to me that what's far more likely to attract funding is new forms of legal business in and around conventional business. And what we're seeing, and it's been a theme of this conference again, is that the legal market is giving rise now to all manner of new providers, legal process outsourcers, offshoring, new forms of technology and so forth, different ways of providing legal services. And as these new ways of delivering legal services emerge, you can see that there are early companies with great promise and potentially need greater capital investment, and so I think are more naturally targets for external investment. But it has amused me listening to many law firms as if they would have the choice of whether or not they take the offer, as it were. I just don't think that's how it's going to end up. I think there might be a couple of firms that are particularly interesting, particularly attractive, or perhaps some firms that might be purchased for their brand, but by and large, interesting investment opportunities, I believe, and I think private equity people agree too, in the legal market are new ways of delivering legal services rather than enhancing the old ones.
One of the things that I'm somewhat surprised and that you emphasize quite a bit in your book is technology. And
yes.
We really, in this conference, honestly, in 3 days, haven't talked too much about technology.
Yeah, well, I'm biased, but of course I do find it rather
Okay.
surprising. I've devoted almost 30 years of my life to thinking about it, so I feel personally insulted. I don't really, but it is very interesting, I think, that technology is so radically changing so many other sectors, so many other industries in all parts of the world, and yet in a conference that's addressing the future of legal services, really a few passing references. And this is actually such a fascinating time. I think it was last week it was announced that for the first week ever in the United States, there were more hits in Facebook than there were in Google. And one thinks of the power of Web 2.0. Facebook, for example, 400 million users now. The power of Web 2.0. It seems to me terribly unlikely that this will not affect the legal market. I always point back to 1996 when I said in my book, The Future of Law, certainly was talking a lot around this time about the likely impact of email. And I was saying email would revolutionise the way that lawyers and clients would communicate. And people said 96, the man's mad.
Never going to happen.
It's not going to happen. And I think Web 2.0 or Facebook and the next generation of that kind of technology are far more likely, or it's far more conceivable today that they will affect law than it was in 1996. The email would affect law. Because when you think about these technologies, and I'm just picking one example, Web 2.0, here's a way of maintaining a network of contacts more effectively, of communicating more effectively, of collaborating more effectively, of gathering and sharing knowledge more effectively. And all of these are vital activities to legal practice, and yet, as I say, somehow they seem to be passing us by. But even more basic technologies like video conferencing, I think over the next few years we're going to see it come of age, where from desktop to desktop we'll have outstanding quality.
You talked about last night about
Well, telepresence is, of course, associated with Cisco, and the current version where you're in a quasi-studio is simply remarkable, and for those people who haven't seen a demonstration, it's well worth the visit. You really do feel you're in the same room as those with whom you're communicating. My point last night was, we will, I believe, and I don't know if it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years or 10 years, but we will see the kind of quality, but not the studio conditions, and so not the backdrop, but we'll see that kind of quality of video rendered on our screens, on our desks, and that will transform face-to-face communication, because so many lawyers today say, well, my clients want to look me in the eyes. That may or may not be true, but actually it will be possible, and far more possible, far more often than it was in the past when video conferencing desktop to desktop comes of age. So that's another technology one thinks people might discuss. Or online dispute resolution. New techniques are emerging all the time for resolving disputes online. Why, again, is that not on the agenda of people who are thinking of the future of legal services? Or for over 30 years, automated document assembly, the production of documents automatically. The technology is well established and well proven. Once more, it surprises me that people aren't making this a focal point.
You think it's a lawyer's natural aversion to technology, which is why these other industries you talked about quickly adapt, quickly use this technology?
No, I don't think it's an aversion or a fear. I think it's actually on the too difficult pile, because what is true of technology is that a lot of systems projects are quite hard to launch, and they often seem time consuming and costly and so forth. So a number of the other solutions, such as legal process outsourcing, somehow intuitively seems more feasible. Get a company in, they isolate the work you can do, we can do that. I often say with a lot of changes, it's like changing the wheel in a moving car. That's the challenge, and I think people think that of technology, that to get the new systems in, you need to freeze frame everything and wait until the technology is firmly installed and reliably so, and that all just seems too difficult. So I think people shy away from it because it looks hard, and people understandably are looking for the low-hanging fruit, they're looking for the quick wins, whereas technology and its impact is longer term, it's more strategic.
Okay.
So I don't find any inherent fear. In fact, you find in the legal community quite a lot of sympathy towards technology. The supply side, I think, has got quite a lot of work to do to make the introduction of technology less forbidding, so that people find it conceptually as appealing as they do, say, legal process outsourcing, which has gathered so much interest over the last few months.
Do you have just question? Do you have another book in the works that we can anticipate, or?
Well, two things really. I'm doing a paperback edition of my book, The End of Lawyers, question mark, and I think the question mark is all important. And in that, it's a revised edition to the extent that I'm bringing a number of the developments up to date in light of new development. I'm also introducing a new model for people to think of legal businesses. I'm suggesting there are 4 different structures for legal businesses, so that'll be in the new paperback. Then it's possible, indeed likely, that my next book's going to be in the future of the professions, because I've written about 7 books on the legal world. A lot of the lessons that I've learned and a lot of the messages I'm conveying, so many professionals say to me, actually applies well beyond law. And indeed, my biggest client over the last 10 years has been a Big 4 firm in the accounting consulting world rather than in the legal world. What I hope that will also bring is not just interesting new market for me, but I find when I look at other professions, I get so much insight into how lawyers can work differently. So I'm hoping if I write a book which shows the way in which other professions have changed, other professions have adapted new processes and practices and technology, then that itself will be helpful for lawyers.
Richard, we certainly sincerely thank you for your time.
Thank you, Greg.
Bye-bye.